Welcome to the Modern JavaScript 2020 course, Part 1, Introduction and Overview. Okay, this course has the following course objectives. This will cover the latest JavaScript 2020 technologies, and it will teach you JavaScript for beginner students if you're a beginner student, and it will also teach JavaScript for advanced students, and also it will provide a unique quality course content for you to enjoy and to learn. The teaching style is going to be very enjoyable and fun. This course will cover the following contents. There will be an introduction to the JavaScript language, and then following on we will cover JavaScript and HTML basics, and after that we will cover JavaScript syntax basics in particular. Moving on to JavaScript variables and functions, and followed by JavaScript reference data types. Next section will be on JavaScript objects and object programming, and next we will cover the browser object model, and next we will cover browser detection. DOM, the document object model, will be covered, and extending the DOM. Event handling in JavaScript, writing JavaScript with forms and using them for validation. Next will be drawing graphics with the canvas in JavaScript, scripting JavaScript for HTML5 in particular, and debugging and fixing errors in JavaScript, using XML with JavaScript, using ECMA with XML, which is using the ECMA JavaScript standard with XML data and with XML documents. JSON, so that's JavaScript object notation data types, will be covered. Next we'll be covering the advanced Ajax and Comet features for synchronous JavaScript handling. Next we'll be handling offline applications, and next we'll be discussing industry best practices, and next we'll be discussing the latest industry APIs, application programming interfaces, and next we will have a number of appendices covering additional useful information for learning and development. In this course, the expected knowledge of people doing this course before they start is that they should have a basic knowledge of computers and basic knowledge of your operating system, whether you're on Windows or Mac or Linux. Basic keyboard skills and mouse skills, obviously, and basic skills using Windows applications like Notepad and Paint. would be useful as well. Okay, moving on to logistics. When you're running, watching this course students should be aware of the following logistics during the course. Restrooms and toilets. Please take comfort breaks when you require during the course. And drinking fountains, coffee, soft drinks. Consume drinks to keep well hydrated and wide awake. For food, visit your local kitchen or food provider at regular meal times, such as breakfast, lunch and dinner. In order to avoid interruptions, keep your phone on silent or switch your phone off when doing this course. For security, wear appropriate clothing and keep doors locked and be safe while watching these educational videos. In an emergency, pause the video and shut down your computer and exit the building. Gather at a safe distance away from your building or your computer and contact the emergency services and inform them of the nature of the emergency. Posture. To maintain a healthy and safe and comfortable posture while watching these videos is recommended in order to avoid backaches and neck aches and strain on your upper body. The course timetable will be as follows. The course will start at 0900 AM and there will be a break at 10:15 AM for 15 minutes only, where you can stretch your legs and have a comfort break and maybe get some tea and coffee. At lunchtime will be at 1200 for 1 hour. You may go to your local food provider and obtain lunch and walk around and get some fresh air and get some exercise. We restart the class at 1 PM, so be prompt. The afternoon break will be at 3 PM for 15 minutes only. This is a comfort break and break for getting a cup of tea and stretching your legs. And we finish class at 4:30 PM on normal days and at 3:30 PM on the last day of the course. Thank you. Your course instructor for this course will be Sam. He's been working in IT for over 20 years and he's worked in telecoms, finance and trading systems over that time, with telephone exchange systems, computer systems and financial computer systems. Our channel is Bain's Infotech World. Please subscribe and like this channel to show your appreciation. Our channel aims to provide quality educational content in the IT area so that we can bring you more educational content. Please like and subscribe. Okay, our first section of the course, Introduction. 1.1, History. Netscape was the company that originally first developed a browser for the internet in 1995. The internet came online, available for the general public in 1994. Netscape developed their browser called the Netscape Navigator as a way of programming the HTML objects shown in the browser window to give it an interactive and dynamic features. HTML by itself was a static markup language in that you could present content on your web page, but there would be no dynamic features such as pop-ups or changing colors or moving objects or scrolling items, and none of the objects on the there's very limited dynamic features of the web page. So JavaScript was developed in order to enhance the features of the web page and allow developers to program the web pages to include more interesting and usable features. One example being form validation. If you enter data on a form, it would have to be sent to the web server and then validated on the web server before you could find if there was any errors in the form input. But with JavaScript you could do validation before you sent the form to the server, and that would save time, especially when you were connecting to the internet over a telephone line and you had a very slow connection to the web server. Also, JavaScript allowed you to build standalone web pages with interactivity that could be applications such as calculators and simple games and so on. So it gave you more enhanced the application development features. Over the years, as different companies developed their own versions of JavaScript, for example, Microsoft, they developed their own version of scripting language for the Internet Explorer called JScript. And different companies developed scripting languages in different ways. So what happened was when a developer would write a web page, he would have to write it in a way that was compatible with both companies' versions of scripting language, which meant a lot of compatibility problems. One web page would load OK on a Netscape Navigator browser, and the same web page would have problems loading in Internet Explorer. So this was competition between companies developing their own standards which didn't match, and that made it very difficult for development of standard web pages. So over the years, Netscape Navigator JavaScript was put forward to the Standards Institution and called the European Computer Manufacturers Association, and it was presented as a standard. So the ECMA adopted JavaScript from Netscape, and it was published as a standard that anyone could use. Web browser programmability. This refers to being able to control and program and change features of a web browser. Now, JavaScript is very powerful and allows you to program and alter HTML elements on the page without going to the server. Also, the browser window can be programmed in real time and can respond to user and system events. This makes the user experience much more smoother, more dynamic, more enjoyable, and more interactive. Okay, section 1.2, Web Developer Console. When you're editing the JavaScript, it can be edited in any text editor, for example, Notepad or appropriate integrated development environment like IDE, like Sublime Text 3. JavaScript code is embedded in a HTML document using script tags. So anything that starts with a script and tag and then contains the JavaScript code in the middle and then ends with a closing script tag. So that will show you the JavaScript embedded in your HTML document. This script tag tells the browser to run the content as a script. Testing your code. To test your code, you can use the Web Developer Console, which is built into your browser. This allows you to debug HTML code and JavaScript code and CSS code, and you can use the web developer tools built into the browser, for example in Chrome or Firefox, which allows you to examine the code as it runs and debug it using the Web Developer Console features. Moving on to the next step, how to run your JavaScript code. To run your JavaScript code, you write your JavaScript code and then you can either include it in your HTML file, or you can have a separate JavaScript file with all your JavaScript code and then link it within your HTML document. You can link to the your JavaScript file and load that. So what will happen is when the browser receives the HTML file from the server, it will pass the HTML document, and when it finds a link, a reference to an external file, such as a JavaScript file, it will load up, it will pull the JavaScript file and open it and load up and run that JavaScript file at the point that it's loaded in HTML. The problem that you get sometimes is that if you include your JavaScript file at the beginning of the HTML document, and it's a rather large file, so it's going to take some time to process it, and what will happen is that the loading of the HTML page itself, the elements on the HTML page, will slow down. So you'll find that your HTML document is frozen. So to avoid this, we suggest that you always put your JavaScript code right at the end of the document. So this means that your HTML document will be fully loaded, and at the end it will start loading the JavaScript, and that won't affect the loading of presentation of the screen. And also the other problem that it fixes is that if your JavaScript is referring to objects or elements in the HTML document and it's trying to change them, if you put it at the beginning, those HTML elements will not be loaded and they won't be available for JavaScript to reference. So you'll get lots of errors saying can't find this element. So again, put that JavaScript ref link right at the end. There are some cases where you need to put small amounts of JavaScript near the beginning, but in general, just always put it at the end. Thank you. Okay, we're back. Let's have a look at the Web Developer Console on Firefox. and we'll walk through some of the features that you can use. Okay, so we've got a Firefox window open here, and we're just searching for Sublime Text 3, which is one of the free editors for JavaScript. Now, what we do is we press Ctrl-Shift-I, or we can go to the Web Developer Console, or we can go to the menu and go down the list and go to Web Developer View. Click on there, and we've got Web Developer Toggle Tools. So that will show the Web Developer Console. And now we see at the bottom we have a development environment. This is looking at the HTML of the search results at the top. And below we have the HTML translation of the window above. And you can select a line on the HTML, and it will show you the it will highlight the HTML above, and so you can go to an item on your window and there, and you'll see that. So if we go on here, this is the search form ID, which is a search form at the top, and its attributes. Let's have a look at something else. Okay, so this is our Google page at the top, where we've got our search results. We're searching for Sublime Text 3, and we get some results appearing. That's HTML page of the Google search results. So we go down to our Web Developer Console, which is this one, and we can see that the HTML document is shown. HTML source code is shown for the page above. Also, if we have a look to the right, we have an area showing the styles, or the CSS. So this filter styles is showing the CSS that's being written to the HTML page, and all of the different features, attributes of the CSS, the body, font size, font family, and so on. And let's get rid of that one. So right on the right hand side, we have information about the sizing of the element that we're looking at, different elements on the HTML page. And you can go in various bits of information about the web page that you have got currently loaded. Let's have a look at Web Developer Tools again. Have a look at Web Console. Right, this is your command line console for your Web Developer Tools. So we can type in commands here. We can do 1 + 2 = 3. We can say, we can assign variables. S1 equals test. So it says the S1 is assigned to test. So if we do S1 now, it comes back with test, which is the value that we've given out. If we do an alert, which is test, it runs a command which brings up an alert box as shown at the top. It's just a simple dialogue, but we can do lots more. We do document, so that's saying which document we are currently on. Choose the Google search page with query of running. The client is Firefox, which is a browser, and the query that we're running is Sublime Text 3. So HTML document currently located at http google.com search. Client is Firefox and query is Sublime Text 3. So using this we can run JavaScript commands, and we can look at the HTML, CSS and JavaScript and debug different aspects of it. Okay, so that's the Web Developer Console. To close the Web Developer Console, we just go along here and click on X, and that will close it. There we go. To get the Web Developer Console up, you can also do right-click and do inspect element, which is inspect one of the HTML elements on your screen. And by going to an element, we can do this. So if we do that and we do inspect element, we find that this text is part of a span element, and if we do click on there and we get open it, we can open up that span element, and we can see that the text in there is what we've got on our screen. So that's fantastic. And so HTML page, CSS, and different properties. Also along the top here we can go quickly to the console where we can run our JavaScript, to the debugger to find any problems that we have in our JavaScript, and look at various other things like performance of JavaScript, memory, allocation, storage of our JavaScript, and various cookies and items of data. On the left hand side we've got cache storage, which is our cache. On the left we've got cookies, no data present. Let's have a look at Google. Okay, we've got quite a few cookies there. And this one's got quite a few cookies as well from Google. IndexedDB is a local database that web page uses, so this is this one, and yeah. Local storage, again, is like cookies, is storing data locally. Again, this is different bits of items of data. Session storage, which is current session. It's got various items of data there as well. So there's a lot there. There's some very comprehensive information for... Hello. Okay, let's have a look at one of my favorite JavaScript editors. You can also use it for editing HTML and for editing CSS. And so in Google, if we go to do a search for Sublime Text 3, we'll usually find top result would be for sublimetext.com, which is the company that produces that software. So we go there to Sublime Text 3, and we get all the information. We go to sublimetext.com, we get all the information about the Sublime Text 3 editor and the latest updates on that. Okay, let's open up the Sublime Text 3 editor now, and this is one we've got prepared earlier. Okay, so this is how it looks. This is the main workspace at the middle. You can change the size of the writing, and you can change the color scheme. You can have a dark color scheme or a light color scheme. I've got a light color scheme at the moment. And on the left hand side is our folder view. So at the moment we're looking at HTML edit.html, and that's loaded on here as it says edit.html, and this is a default web page for the browser that it opens when you first launch it without connecting to the web. As you can see, you've got the docs.type HTML, which is your HTML5 indicator, and then you've got various comments, you've got various links to style sheets, text.css as well. So these are CSS files that are related to this web page. Next we've got script, where we've got a link to a external file containing JavaScript. So this is one here, script. It says source is Chrome, search, which is the folder, and then most visited utils.js. .js is a JavaScript file. So the browser will load the JavaScript files here. Then we go into the main HTML document, the title of the HTML document, and the body, and so on, divs and forms and labels of the web page. So we can have a look at the CSS files as well. So if we click on timetable.css, we get timetable.css appearing at the top, and these are the CSS commands. So timetable is a class defined in CSS, and margin top is a attribute that we're setting, saying margin, set the top margin to 300 pixels for anything that has any element that has the class of timetable. So that's that. And okay, this is what we're looking for, our JavaScript. So if we go comment.js, which is our JavaScript file, comment.js is loaded in Sublime Text.3, and we can see that the this is the JavaScript definition. Here we have there's a jQuery command, says the document.getElements by class name, which is getting a list of all the elements in the HTML document, and we use a function and then we define a function to process those elements. Again, down at the bottom here we've got function definition, function add event, parameters object, ev type fn, curly brackets open, curly brackets close, showing the beginning and the end of the JavaScript program. So this is a complete function here. So function begins with word function and it ends with a closing curly bracket. Within the curly brackets we have various hard JavaScript statements, if statement, else statement, and we have various operations on different objects and calls to functions. We have a return function here, return true, return false, depending on the result of this function call. and so on. So that is the Sublime Text.3 editor. There's lots of menu options here. You can change you can have different functions, different control keys to do different things on text and search and replace, different preferences. But as you can see, this is a very useful way of looking at JavaScript because it gives you the color coding for different parts of the language, and that makes it very easy to read and analyze. On the right hand side we have a sort of, a telescopic view of the code, and it's showing you the total amount of JavaScript you've got and where you are on that. So you can scroll down here, and from the beginning to the top, from the top to the middle to the bottom of your web page. If we type some JavaScript in here, we can see the syntax assistant document. So if we type document, then we do space, we'll get let's type that out. You can get syntax highlighting and different kinds of help, but we can do document. Okay, there we go. So if we type the document command, which is in jQuery and in JavaScript, and we type .s, and then that gives you the different methods that are available for the document. Set cookie, submit, set for year, and various ones. But we've also at the top here we've got get elements, for example. So if we did we're writing a query, and we say get, and you can see the syntax assistant will give you a list of the different commands available for document.get, get for you, element ID by class name, and so on. So this gives you a function. Great. So that's how that works. So that's everything that we're going to cover for Sublime Text 3 editor. Thank you. Another editor that's used widely and is a favorite among developers in the web development industry is Visual Studio Code. Now this is from Microsoft and it's free, and it's very, very powerful. It's the editor that Microsoft developers use for developing using different Microsoft technologies like C++, C#, and so on, but also in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So what we do is we do a search for Visual Studio Code, and usually the first first item at the top, first result will be code.visualstudio.com, which is the Microsoft website for Visual Studio Code. And if we click on there, we can go into the Microsoft Visual Studio Code website, and from here we can download the Visual Studio Code for any of our environments such as macOS, Windows 64, Linux 64, and we can just download and install and start doing development with it. Visual Studio Code also allows you to use Python, C++, editing, C#, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what we'll do now is we've got the Visual Studio Code down here at the bottom, so we'll open that up. And again, we'll look at the environment. So that symbol at the top left gives you the tells you there's Visual Studio Code. At the top, within the middle, in the middle, we have the workspace. On the left-hand side, we have the folder view or the Explorer for which file we're looking at. At the moment, we're looking at this tab.html document, which is a default search page on Chrome. And you can see some really nice color highlighting, and we've got doc-type HTML, which is your HTML5 document. We've got various comments here in green. Then we've got the HTML document tag, and then we have links to various CSS files used by this HTML document, and we have links to various JavaScript files also used by this document. And then as we go down, we have the body section and divs and so on. The nice feature of this is that you can do collapse. So, you know, if you want to hide some code, you can do a collapse and then open, you know, segments of branches of your code tree. On the right hand side, we have a satellite view of the code, and it's showing you where we are in the whole document from the top, middle to the end, where we are in the document. We can scroll up and down. Okay, so let's have a look at CSS. So again, the same thing with CSS. We open the timetable.css and we have color coding, CSS syntax, CSS classes, and we also have the color coding commands there, which is very nice. And we go on to comments.js. Comments.js is the JavaScript, and again we start with there's some syntax highlighting on here, but it's not as good as Sublime Text 3 that we looked at earlier. I mean, if you look at the CSS mod document, this JavaScript document, the syntax colors are very limited, but if we look at Sublime, the color coding is much better. I mean, it recognizes the document and the get elements and the parameters, whereas on Visual Studio Code it's not really picking up the document commands or the parameters for color highlighting. But that's that can be changed. You can define your own colors and so on for developing your own syntax coloring system. So let's go back to HTML. This is nice. Okay, moving on to section 1.3, JavaScript features. In this section we're going to discuss some of the main features of the JavaScript programming language and what it means to a web developer. Okay, the first one is interpreted. JavaScript is interpreted, which means that JavaScript is written in a file, and when it is run, each command is interpreted at that time. So each command is interpreted as it is processed by the JavaScript engine. This is comparing it to other programs like Java or C++, where you have to compile the source code into an executable file before it can be run. With JavaScript, it can be run just from a pure text file. You don't need an executable file. So this makes it simpler to change and edit and run JavaScript because you save time by not having to compile it. And when you run it, the JavaScript engine will process the JavaScript commands and create a runtime code, and that code is run by the JavaScript engine. An interactive user runs JavaScript in the browser window. So JavaScript is built into the browser, and you don't need to download it separately or buy it or anything or pay for it. It's included in the browser that you're using, and it's used for running the JavaScript code in the web pages that you download. JavaScript is what they call just-in-time technology, which means that the code is compiled at the time it is run. So each command is interpreted, and each set of functions and so on, code that is defined in your JavaScript file is loaded and is compiled into executable code when it's run, instead of being compiled previously. Just in time means that JavaScript is compiled just before being run, so it's just in time, just in time for it to be run. This saves time in building an application. It means there may be errors that only get picked up at runtime instead of being picked up and fixed at compile time. The compilation process, for example in C++ or Java, will pick up a lot of errors in the source code of your program, and you can correct those before before the program is actually run live. But in JavaScript, what will happen is you'll get those errors when you run it, and it may not be what you were expecting it to do, so you'll have to debug the errors. In JavaScript, first-class functions are functions that you write in JavaScript, and first-class functions means that the functions that you write on your own are treated exactly the same way as, in terms of priority, as built-in functions and language keywords that come in the JavaScript language. So that means you can write a function and it will be treated exactly the same as an internal part of the JavaScript language. So writing your own functions is actually extending the JavaScript language, and are treated exactly the same way. This allows you to make JavaScript functions and expressions very powerful by combining and chaining functions. Speed and power is achieved in much smaller lines of code. So by defining your functions and extending the functions within the JavaScript language, you can combine functions, so you can reduce the size of code. You can chain functions, which means running one function and then sending the output of that function into another function, and then sending the output of that function into another function. So you can run a number of functions in one expression. You can run, a complete chain of functions, which makes it very powerful. And you're doing a lot of work within a small number of lines of code. Okay, JavaScript is used widely outside of the browser environment as well. Recently, in the last few years, the JavaScript engine has been copied over to other environments and used in those environments to provide programming scripting type features. Node.js is a well-known server-side scripting language. Now, JavaScript normally runs in the browser, which means it runs on the client side, which is the browser. The client is the browser that the user uses to load his web pages and surf the internet. Now, Node.js is a server-side technology that allows you to build a web server using JavaScript, and when the client requests a web page from the server, Node.js will allow you to receive the request and process the request using JavaScript, and then return the response and results back to the client machine. Adobe Acrobat is a document technology for writing and reading PDF documents. Internally, it uses JavaScript for formatting and processing PDF documents. Apache CouchDB is a HTTP JSON database which allows for replication when you're using big data. HTTP is your hypertext transport protocol, which is the protocol that's used between your web browser and the server on the internet. And JSON is the JavaScript object notation, which is a simplified notation for representing data objects such as lists and records and elements of data structures. Replication is a feature where one database is copied onto another database, so that if the first database crashes, then the second database has still got a copy of the data which is not corrupted, and that can carry on so the web server can carry on processing and running the data, running its applications without having to bring the whole system down and restart a new database. Replication provides you with a safety for having multiple copies of the same data, and provides you with some redundancy in terms of if one database crashes or two databases crash, a third database is unlikely to crash, so it will be available for accessing the same data. Big data refers to what we currently have on the internet. Basically, data today is produced in massive quantities on the internet because we have millions and billions of users using Facebook, using Google, using YouTube, and that usage of the data and activity of users and programs and applications on the internet has produced massive amounts of data which were never available before. When systems were separate, they didn't talk to each other, and users were limited. Users for a system or an application were limited to a few thousand instead of millions or billions. Big data represents a problem because if you have terabytes of data, if you have massive amounts of data, how do you make sense of it? You need to have a program, or you need to have tools that can search that data and make sense of it, and that's what big data is. It's massive databases, and this is where the database Apache CouchDB comes in. It can handle big data databases. Adobe ActionScript. Adobe ActionScript is a scripting language built into Flash. Flash is a video or yeah, it's a video sort of presentation animation technology that Adobe developed, and it's based on JavaScript, and you can use it for building Flash applications which provide you with lots of animation, and also you can use it for building Flash videos, which provides you with videos that you can watch using Flash. Okay, moving on to the next session. The next session is, next element that we're talking about is ECMAScript. Now ECMAScript refers to a version or a standard of JavaScript that was developed by the European Computer Manufacturers Association, and it was the standard of JavaScript that was agreed and developed and published by the European Computer Manufacturers Association. And the purpose of the standard was that all the different companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple would use the same specification for the JavaScript and develop JavaScript in the same way with the same features and same structure, so that web pages would work on each browser in the same way, instead of being not compatible with some browsers and only working on, you know, some versions of JavaScript. Because if you have different versions of JavaScript, then the web page is going to break on some browsers and it's going to run fine on some browsers. So what was happening was, historically, was that developers, they had to develop different versions of the web page for different browsers. So if a browser requested a page and it was a Google browser or a Microsoft browser or an Apple browser, the web page, the server would have to detect the browser type of browser that was being that was requesting the code and HTML pages and JavaScript, and then send a particular piece of a special page just for that browser, which made it very very wasteful of resources and time consuming. So an agreed JavaScript standard, you write one HTML page, you write one JavaScript document, one JavaScript program, one CSS program or document, and they work on any browser, Apple, Microsoft or Google Chrome. So the conformance to the standards in different browsers means that the same code can run in each browser without experiencing compatibility problems. Compliance to the European Computer Manufacturers Association standards improves the user experience of the web, because web pages just work and there's no errors, and the user experience is much more pleasant, much more enjoyable and smoother and satisfying. High level. The JavaScript language is a high-level language, which means that it's written in an English-type language. It's not written in machine code, which is the language that a processor on a computer, the CPU, Central Processing Engine, understands. So machine code would be like ones and zeros and ones and so on, which is what eventually is run on a CPU. So high-level languages like JavaScript are easy for human beings to write and understand. The code is a high-level language, meaning that it's written in English or normal language style and easily readable. So it's written in English or whichever language whichever country you are in, your particular language that you're using. Compared to lower-level languages like machine code, it's much more powerful and easy to understand. To write machine code would be very tedious and would take a very long time, and you would make a lot of mistakes because it's not easy to understand for a human being, but we can write high-level code like JavaScript or Java or C++, and then the compiler will convert it into, or the interpreter will convert it into machine code, and it will run smoothly. Dynamic typing. Dynamic typing in JavaScript refers to the variables that are created in JavaScript. When you create a variable like variable, say y equals a string or a number or a boolean. So different types of data variables can be used to store different kinds of data. You might be storing a number, you might be storing a text, you might be storing a date, you might be storing a boolean, you might be storing a decimal number, you might be storing some other data type. And dynamic typing means that in JavaScript you don't have to declare, you don't have to say which data type your variable is going to be using. What you do is you just say y equals quotation marks, string, quotation marks, semicolon, and that variable y will be assigned the value of the string. Then later on you can say y equals 25, and then what you've done is you've just changed the value of y from a string to a number, and that is dynamic. It means you can do it as you go along or whenever you like. You're not limited to the type of data you can put in that variable. This makes it easier and simpler for developers to write code, and yeah, it's faster and quicker and can be more powerful. Okay, next section. JavaScript is what's called prototype based. Now, a prototype is similar to a class that you have in Java, except that it's not as strict. Although not strictly an object-oriented language like Java, JavaScript has features that exhibit class-like properties, and these are called prototypes. So a prototype is a template for a function or an object that can be extended or copied as required. So for example, if you have a math function in your in JavaScript to calculate the square root of something, and math.sqrt, for example, is a square root of a number, and that has various properties. So within the JavaScript language, it has a prototype, and that, if you look at math.sqrt you'll see that that function has lots of different methods that you can operate. One might be print, one might be format, one might be get the length of the number, one might be find, round it up to an integer. But what you can do is you can extend it, so you can add your own methods onto that prototype, and those methods will be available in your JavaScript code anywhere. So what you've done is you've expanded and extended the JavaScript programming language by extending the prototype. Everything in Java is based on a prototype, so every command that you do, print, alert, any command that you use in JavaScript is derived from a prototype. And eventually all of the commands and all of the prototypes are derived from the object prototype, which is the master prototype. So everything in Java is an object, and every element in Java or keyword in Java is prototype, and then every method or function is derived from a prototype. And that is all documented within the JavaScript language. Now, web technologies. JavaScript is one of the main web technologies used in building web pages on today. JavaScript provides the programming code behind the web page. So it allows you, when you click on a button, you can decide using JavaScript what happens when you click on that button. So you can do event handling. When you move a mouse over a picture or a photo, you can decide what happens then. For example, an image rollover is when you move your mouse over an image, and then the image JavaScript program detects that you've moved the mouse over the image, and then it will load a different image. Or for example, if you're doing thumbnails, you roll your mouse over a small thumbnail, and then as you do that, as it's on the thumbnail, a bigger picture of that thumbnail will appear, showing you what that image represents. That's called a rollover. But you can do other features as well. You can do form validation. So you enter data into a form and press submit, and then you can have JavaScript in the web page. We will check your field input values, and if any of them, and do validation, and if any of them are wrong or need changing, then it will pop up a message and saying this is invalid, please change this. JavaScript can also be used for rewriting HTML dynamically. So if you load a HTML document and there is a form, you can hide the form. You can hide the section that contains the form, and when the user clicks on a button, you can pop, that form will open up, expand and open up, and the user can enter data into that form. The other main technologies used within a web page are HTML, which is for format, which is your content of your HTML page, like text, images, your header and your body and so on, and that's very basic basic content that you can put in your HTML document. And then you have CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Now this is a styling technology that allows you to control the presentation and sometimes the behavior of elements on your HTML document. For example, if you have a H1 text, heading 1 text, and you can, in CSS, you can say you want all the H1 elements to be 50 pixels high and particular font, and they have to be color green. And just by changing one line in your CSS file, you can change all H1 documents, H1 elements within HTML, your HTML document. So it makes it very powerful. Just by changing your CSS, you can change the look and feel of your HTML document completely. HTML provides the semantic and content structure. HTML provides the semantic and content structure of your web page. CSS provides the formatting and presentation of element styles on a web page. And JavaScript provides the interactive and dynamic web features such as image scrolling, form validation, dynamic HTML rewriting, etc. Okay, next section. JavaScript technologies. Now, because JavaScript is used so widely in web pages on the internet, it's become the standard language for web development, and as a result, Various companies have written reusable JavaScript libraries. These are basically pre-built functions or elements that you can use in your web page. All you need to do is copy the JavaScript file from this from these companies and include it in your web page, and then you just run the commands in your JavaScript file. You just run the commands and use the tools that the company's JavaScript file provides you with. For example, jQuery is a very common library that's used in nearly all web pages, and you can use by including jQuery JavaScript files in your web page. You can manipulate the HTML elements, your document object model, and so on in your web page using very simple commands, and jQuery will translate those into more complex commands. And the libraries also provide you with an element of protection against incompatibilities between different browsers. A JavaScript library will contain different commands for if one browser supports a feature and another browser doesn't. What the JavaScript library can do is it can create that feature in the other browser, and so that both the browsers behave in the same way. And this is called sort of filling in or extension of JavaScript features. So it's very powerful, and the good thing is it's free. Okay, that's all for this section. Thanks very much. Hello. Okay, in this section we're going to go over some of the course resources that you can use. This means includes websites and videos and learning resources that you can access for free to increase your understanding of the JavaScript language. Okay, the resources that will be useful to students in this course are YouTube, lots of videos on YouTube, including these ones. So watch those and learn. Website is tutorials. Okay, one very good one is w3schools.com. Now this website is a training company that provides free training materials for learning web technologies, but they also provide certification and they also run courses, so that could be very useful. And let's have a look. So we've also got developer, or MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. Now this is by the company that develops the Firefox browser, and their developers have made available lots of web development resources on the Mozilla website. And if you go to developer.mozilla.org, you can find those there. Moving in, next one is ECMA, European Computer Manufacturers Association website. So ECMA JavaScript. If you want to learn more about ECMA JavaScript, go to www.ecmainternational.org. Again, Wikipedia, of course, is full of learning materials and information and content for any subject, including JavaScript. So go to wikipedia.org and search for JavaScript. JavaScript editors, we've covered Sublime Text 3, very good, available at sublimetext.com. JavaScript editors, again, another one is Visual Studio Code. We've covered, which is available at visualstudio.com. That's all for now. Thank you. Okay, we're back. Right. In this section we're going to look at some of the web resources that we mentioned earlier for learning more about JavaScript. Okay, the first one here I've got here is the EXMA www.exmainternational.org. Now this is a European Computer Manufacturers Association website, and on here you'll find the standards that they publish for JavaScript, which are called EXMAScript. So these are JavaScript specifications which different manufacturers like Microsoft, Apple, Google will use to build their versions of JavaScript. Now you can do, this is the 10th edition, which is June 2019, and there's different versions here. There's EXMA edition 10 in HTML format, PDF format, 262 PDF format. You can download these and read them, and you may find them interesting in terms of what JavaScript as a language contains, and so on. Okay, if we move on to Wikipedia now, and we have the Wikipedia page, and we search for JavaScript, and what we get is lots of information about JavaScript and EXMAScript, programming language, EXMAScript, and different features: high level, prototype based, first class, and so on. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, core technologies of the World Wide Web. Okay, very interesting. So go to Wikipedia and browse and read up on JavaScript. And going on to our next website, which is w3schools.com. This is an excellent resource for learning web technologies. It contains lots of tutorials on JavaScript, tutorial covering different parts of the language, and it also has lots of practical examples. Learn by example is the main feature of this website. Lots of examples to learn from. So for example, we have here in JavaScript, my first JavaScript, click me to update display and time, date and time. So this is a JavaScript page. Click on this, and what happens? The date and time appears magically below on this. So imagine this was a web page and you clicked on the button, you'd get the date and time shown below. So you can try it yourself as well, which is really good, which takes you into the source, the language editor, and you can change the source code and run it again. So so here we are. So we've got two main windows. This is your source code. This is your HTML. This is your HTML document, and as you can see in there, you've got the button, and you've got the event on click, and then you've got the elements: paragraph element, body element, HTML element. So this is your button. It says type button, and so that's your button that's shown. And then it says on click, which means when somebody clicks on that button, do this. It means document, get element by ID, demo. So it finds the element in the part of the HTML document that contains the word demo, and inside it, in the inner HTML, it says put in the date. So that's a date function which picks up the date and from the system or from your computer and outputs it. And then what we do is then after that, after the date, we close that beginning tag, and then we have a closing tag which is a slash button, which closes button definition, and then we, in between those two, we have the text that appears on the button. Click me to display date and time. And down at the bottom we just have the word. We have this paragraph which has got nothing in it at the moment. We define this paragraph here with an ID of demo. Yeah, paragraph ID of demo, and opening tag and closing tag and nothing inside it. So that's blank. So that's why we don't see a date and time at the beginning when we first load it. And then the body and HTML closing tags. So that's very simple. It's just button with on click, and we've got an empty element, which is the paragraph element. So button on click, empty element with an ID available called demo. And on the right hand side we have the web page that is generated by the source code on the left. And what we can do at the top here is we can say click on run, so it will run this, it will load this web page on the right hand side. So what we can do in here is, let's put in some let's put in another, let's increase the size of that. And let's put in another piece of line. So we copy that and we say make that heading 1. Welcome to my world. Okay, so this is going to be a heading 1 tag, and just change that to heading 1, and we can say style, so we give it a style, so we say style is color, it's going to be green. Let's see if that works. So we've just added some code onto this web page, and let's see if this works. So what we do is we do run this web page, and what do you know? Would you believe it? We have our H1 text, color text that we just added, appears on the web page. We have our original JavaScript code, and we have the button. So it says click me to do display date and time. So we click on that and we get the date and time from your machine, from your computer. What else can we display? If we copy this button, put it down here, and we say alert, you clicked on me. So we've given it a command there, and we go like Let's go there. Click me to see an alert box. So right, so we've added another button on here, and button is saying on click. Let's see if we can do style command on that. Color red, yeah. So we've got a new button element, button style red, color red. On click alert, you clicked me. Click me to see alert box. So we run this. Okay, so here we are. So we have the original H1 text, we have the H2 text, we have the original button which shows show me a date. So it shows you the date still, and we have our button that we've just added. Now it says click me to see an alert box. So click on that and nothing happens. Okay, so that means there's an error in the code somewhere. Let's try this debugging out. Ah, there we go. So you clicked on me. You click on me. So the problem was that we had quotes around the alert command, but we forgot to put the quotes in the middle for the alert parameter in the alert command. So yeah, so we got the date and we get an on-click button. So this allows you to learn HTML and JavaScript. And in very quite useful and interesting way. Okay, moving on to the next website, we have the developer Mozilla.org, which is the Mozilla's developer network, and Mozilla develops the Firefox browser, and at the moment we're on the JavaScript section of the website, and it provides you with lots of technologies, or lots of information about learning JavaScript. So it says complete beginners start here, start getting started on the web. JavaScript is programming language. So we zoom that up and it says JavaScript is programming language, and it says interactivity, so on. What is JavaScript really? Hello world example. It's got examples of code and text. Hello world. And so on. So it gets into quite a lot of detail, which is lovely. Lovely way to learn. Lovely way to learn JavaScript. Okay, let's go on to the main page here. Resources for developers, by developers. So this means resources for web developers by the developers of the work for